In this video, I want to talk about defined names and show you how to create defined names, a couple of different methods, and once you've got your names defined, how to edit or change those names. So first of all, I want to talk about what is a defined name. So a defined name happens when you choose a cell or a group of cells and assign a name to them. And you're probably asking yourself, why would you do that? Well, one reason is that using the names rather than the cell references is more intuitive. For example, cell B3 in this worksheet has a date in it. Well, using the name invoice date makes more sense than using simply B3. It's more descriptive and it's easier to remember. Another thing that is advantageous about the defined names is that you can use them in formulas, and when you use them in a formula, it's the same as putting in an absolute cell reference. So another advantage is that you can use the defined names for quick navigation, and you've experienced that in the worksheets in Appendix D when you were formatting the periodic table worksheet and the element worksheet. So there are some things that you need to know about defined names before we actually start adding some to this worksheet. One thing is when you're naming or giving your defined name, you cannot have any spaces in it or characters other than numbers, letters, and the underscore. No other characters. It also cannot be a name that would represent a valid cell address, like FY2013 is actually a valid cell address in an Excel worksheet. So you couldn't do that. And it's best to use a short, meaningful name. Your defined names can have up to 255 characters, which is ridiculous. You probably want something between 5 and 15 characters that's meaningful to you. Okay, so let's get started defining some names in this workbook. So I'm going to start out by adding a defined name for cell B24. So I'm going to go ahead and click on B24. Then I'm going to come up to the name box on the formula bar here, and I'm going to click, and then I'm going to type in my defined name, and I'm just going to use the label that's in the worksheet, handling cost, but I'm not going to put any spaces in there. Once I've typed it in, I just press enter, and I'm done. I'm going to do the same thing for parking fee. The thing that I need to remember is before I start typing out this defined name, I need to click in the name box. Otherwise, I'm just going to be replacing the cell contents with my name, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so I've named some individual cells. Now I want to name a range. And later on, we're going to use this range, this little table, in a VLOOKUP function. So giving it a name makes a lot of sense. It'll make it easier to do the VLOOKUP. So this particular range we're going to call ticket prices. And again, I'm not putting any spaces in. And then I'm also going to select F25 through J25, this part of the worksheet called Transfer Area, which we'll be using a little later on when you get to the macros. And I'm going to call that Transfer Area, of course. Okay, one advantage, as you should already know from Appendix D, is that once you've got these defined names, you can use them to quickly navigate the workbook. So let's say I want to get to the parking fee cell quickly. I just click the down arrow in the name box and click on parking fee, and it takes me to that cell. Okay, so there are other ways or another method for creating defined names. Here I've got this list of different items in my little application here, and I could go through and make B3 and B4 and B5, etc. Defined names one by one, but I can also do that in one step. And so I'm going to first of all select both A3 through B12 and make sure that you're selecting through B12, not C12, otherwise your defined names will not work, or they won't work in formulas. Okay, once I've done that, I'm going to go to the Formula tab, and in the Defined Names group, I'm going to click on Create from Selection. Now, my names are going to come from this column, from column A, which is to the left of the cells that I want to have the defined names in. So I'm going to unclick top row. I'm going to make sure that left column is selected, and I'm going to click OK. And nothing really has happened, but if you go to the name box and click the down arrow, you'll see that all of those names have been added to the list. Okay. So the next thing I want to show you how to do is use the name manager. So again, on the Formulas tab in the Defined Names group, you would click on Name Manager. Here are all of your defined names and the ranges that they pertain to. If I want to change one of them, for example, the number of parking decals, I can click on it and click Edit. This is kind of a long name, so I'm just going to call it decals. So I'm just going to type in decals and click OK, and it changes it. If you decide you no longer need a particular defined name, such as transfer area here, you can select it and delete it. Excel will check with you to make sure that yes, that's what you want to do. And then you can click Close. Okay, so one of the things, since this particular worksheet is an application, it's designed so that people who are not Excel users can easily use it. For example, this is a community theater. Volunteers are probably going to be manning the box office. Their experience with Excel is going to vary widely, so you want to make this as simple as you possibly can. So one thing you can do to help future users of this workbook is to add a list of the defined names. And I'm going to do that on the documentation worksheet. So in cell A10 on the documentation worksheet, I'm going to type in defined names as a title, press enter, And then in cell A11, I'm going to go back to my Formulas tab. I'm going to click on Use in Formula, and then I'm going to go down here to Paste Names, and here's a list of all the names that I've defined. And you can choose individual names if you so desire. I want to paste the entire list, so I'm going to click on Paste List. And there's a list of all the defined names that I have currently set up in this workbook. So that's a quick overview of creating defined names. In the next video, we'll use the defined names in some formulas.